Hello, everybody. This is John Froelich here from Bramasol, and I'm excited to be here on our second Ask the Experts panel. And I am really excited to have two really outstanding experts on our team here to talk with us about billing and revenue innovation management integration with RAR. We're going to share some insights from real projects. This is not your theory stuff. This is your actual practical application. So I'm looking forward to an exciting session today. First, I want to welcome Shashank, who is a member of our expert team, our COE, working on a couple of large projects. Shashank, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join this from your project over at IBM.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here and answer the questions.
Yeah, thank you. And Sunil Gantella. Sunil, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're working hard on discovery, a lot going on over there. We're just very happy to have you again on our Ask the Experts panel. Thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you, John. Glad to be here.
So just to remind everybody, this is our Ask the Experts panel. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions. Now, we did get a number of questions from people in the run-up to this session, so we'll go through a few of those, but please feel free during the session to reach out, ask your questions. We're going to keep this to a half an hour, so just get your questions in as soon as you can. Just to tee everything up, why do we do these? Well, we do this because we believe that the world is moving to what we call the digital solutions economy. This is a customer-driven model in which the customer wants to be in charge of the entire business and business cycle, how they engage with you, whether it's, by the way, B2B or B2C. They want to do everything from when they start the customer engagement through creating their own offers and solutions, delivery and fulfillment, billing, invoicing, payments and collections, and RevRec. So today we're going to talk about the connection between solution order management, BRIM, and revenue recognition. So as you can see here, SAP S/4HANA is the platform for doing this. Why? Because SAP S/4HANA is the only underlying platform that can handle the kinds of issues or handle the kinds of volume, scalability, and complexity required for today's environment. Everything from managing, so creating, managing, and doing the life cycle of your subscriptions, collecting usage, applying those usages and doing pricing and charging, billing and settling, handling all of the payments, managing credits, collections, and discounts and disputes, and then providing customer care. Today, we're going to focus primarily on a few questions. So I'm going to tee this up. As you know, we kind of address this, Sunil and Shashank, from our perspective around four real dimensions of the digital solutions economy. We find that most of the issues and challenges, or most of the projects, relate to volume, velocity, density, and complexity. A couple of questions came in from people in our audience around the idea of high volumes. For anybody who attended yesterday's webinar, you would have heard that some customers have as high as 1 billion, with a B, transactions that are being processed in a single day. S/4HANA can handle that. That's a lot. Sunil, what has your experience been, and how should customers prepare for these kinds of high volumes as they relate to RAR?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a lot of things which one has to look at. Basically, I would say start off with something which is very basic as the availability of your resources, right? I mean, for your kind of volume, do you have enough processing power? Right from that point on to understanding how can I better utilize these processing powers, like how do I leverage parallelization? How do I understand certain limitations within SAP, within RAR especially? And then how do I understand the dependencies and build the dependencies? So let me give you an example. For example, when you're talking about parallelization, you can trigger 10 jobs in parallel, you can trigger 20 jobs in parallel, but you'll have to find out for the kind of volume which you are working on, what is the optimum size, how many jobs you can trigger in parallel to process the kind of volume which you currently have. That's one area which one needs to focus on. And then understanding the limitations. There are certain limitations, like if you are scheduling jobs, for example, RAR, something very basic. A lot of you might know that if you are scheduling posting jobs, you have to follow posting job A followed by B and C. This is a standard limitation, so obviously you will follow it that way. But when you are processing order rise and invoice rise, when should you process these rise? Like a billing job is running, right? You want to process your invoice rise after the billing job finishes. So you have to understand those kind of limitations also. There is an inbuilt limitation within SAP that you have to follow the sequence, and some you may not. You will have to build them based on your understanding and see at what times your other jobs are running, which trigger these RAI creations, and then how you are able to set up your jobs to make sure that you are not missing out on processing any of those RAIs. Ultimately, the aim is to make sure that we process the day's transactions within the day, so that at the month end we are not scrambling and we are trying to get our reporting on time, because you want to close the month on time, and probably on workday 1 or workday 2 you want to get all of your reporting out of the system. So to be able to do that, you have to understand these processes, like the limitations and dependencies, and of course work with the basis team. Another key aspect is when we talk about the hardware resources, do we need dedicated servers? I mean, especially for high volume, you definitely need dedicated app servers for running these IR jobs. I mean, you cannot be mixing these jobs with everything else which is running on your SAP system. So you may have to look into those aspects also. So I would say an understanding of all of these would better help to prepare you. And another point which I want to stress on is the testing part. Like before you go live, you want to do some tests. And at this point, especially in high volume business, there's a tendency to overlook this aspect where the testing is done not with the entire data volume. You are testing a small portion of that data in the test environment, for the simple reason that you are not able to replicate this kind of volume. So it often gets overlooked. I'm not saying everyone is doing that, but in my experience, I've seen places where it was not done, and then you have to face surprises after you go live. So one has to prepare for your go live. Make sure that you are testing, be it migrations, be it a regular invoicing job, be it regular your usage calculations, whatever it is. You have to simulate those many transactions in the test system and be able to process those systems to understand the real implications of the resources or the limitations you may have or the challenges you may face.
That's well said, and I think it's important that people understand that idea of coordination, Sunil. While we the power of SAP is certainly the integration between the various components, whether it's SOM itself for the subscriptions or a SOM to SD for hardware. There's coordination, so you want to make sure that those things are coordinated.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a question. I know initially, Shashank, we were going to kind of let you not ask about this, but Sunil asked pointed out something interesting about the 3-step process. Can you talk for a moment in our previous webinar, if you will, or session, we talked about OCM. OCM is no longer a 3-step process. I believe it's a 2-step process. Are there any things that you think people need to think about in the new 2-step process under OCM?
Yeah, so that is really, a drastic change, and it's very effective. Most of the clients are in the current situation are handling this through some sort of enhancements. So what the good thing is, starting from OP 2021, not from 2020. So SAP has come up with some optimized, direct posting mechanism, wherein most of these financial documents are tightly aligned with the, FI subledger, whenever a fulfillment happens or whenever a time-based revenue or cycle kicks in. So you need not really have to run the 3-step posting jobs. Like as and when there is a fulfillment happens and that is expected to have some revenue recognized, so that will automatically generate a accounting document. And going forward, there will not be any placeholder for FARD posting table. So it is a very crucial table in the current OP20 system or lesser versions. But going forward, it is going to be directly associated and updated with the AC DOCA table, where it is, it is a placeholder for, your regular FI subledgers, whether it is AR, AP, asset accounting, or any GL stuff. So SAP is incorporating these ARIA related fields in the same AC DOCA with by allowing the direct postings into the FI subledger. So this is really a very good feature, at least in my past experience. Everywhere that I worked, clients were, asking whether, I can run a contract, I can generate a posting document by a specific RAR contract. Because what happens is the way SAP, when you run the standard program A, B, and C, the system will automatically generate multiple accounting lines which are really associated with multiple RAR contracts into one accounting document. So when they wanted to reconcile it, it is always, tough for them to identify, which contract or POB that particular line is associated with and how that number has been calculated. It has become very tough for the initial customers to handle with. And later, we always enhanced some sort of postings
Right.
to, have one accounting document. But this is going to be taken care by standard SAP going forward.
Okay. Thank you. That's great. And I know that we spend a lot of time with the team in Waldorf, and that's a feature and that's an area in subscriptions that they're continuing to innovate and evaluate. So thank you. Let's talk about the next one, because you hinted at, we both hinted at sender components. I'm going to start with you, Shashank, on this one. We've had several people writing questions about sender components, right? And while some companies use various components of SAP, we're used to, standard SAP is to use SD. Some people don't. They use other mechanisms. Project systems might be an example of how another component that might send information in creating orders, etc. But they might also have, several of our customers have used non-SAP systems. Can you tell me a little bit about, your perspective on how do you track those? What's the way to integrate those external components? Can they integrate them directly into BRF Plus or into SAP, into RAR, or should they use SAP SD as a stopping point?
It's not mandatory that you have to have SAP SD always, but SAP standard SAP provides you option to integrate, SD and CRM or BRIM FICA components to be integrated with RAR. So these are the sender components that are defined by standard SAP. Like CA is for contract accounts receivable, where you use BRIM integrated with FICA, and SD is where you normally generate your sales orders or sales contracts. So you can also use CRM component if you use service agreements or service contracts. And apart from these, if you also use a non-SAP system, where you've been creating your orders or doing the fulfillments like deliveries or invoices. Like in the past, we have implemented for several customers. Like some clients used to use Salesforce, some clients used to use different third-party systems like RevPro and or other Oracle-based systems, and we used to integrate them by considering them as non-SAP external systems, and we used to maintain some RFC destinations, and we have done that in the past to get it integrated and create the contracts for them into SAP system. And we can also use that option to migrate. Like if you have several orders lying in your legacy non-SAP system, so you can maintain the ports to get those data directly available for your migration when you run the FARQL expert. So even that is possible. But precisely, standard SAP allows you to use either SD, FICA, or CRM components. but it also provides you option to integrate with non-SAP sender components.
Okay. And by the way, I can also have SAP sender components in different instances of SAP. I don't have to have just one instance. I can have it coming from different ERPs or different instances, correct?
You're right. You're very much true. Sorry, I forgot that point. Yeah. So it clients like, Apple, we have several boxes, each box deals with some sort of revenue stream and the sender components. So we used to, consolidate the data and pull it over to RAR by maintaining those sender components accordingly.
And Sunil, you jumping over to you, your current client uses a very different, they have their own proprietary system up front. How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, that's one common question which comes up, like especially in cases where your ordering system is not SAP but a non-SAP system. So the question is, hey, should I just create RISE because my ordering system is a non-SAP system? I use that information and create a RISE, or is the recommended approach to create provider contracts or sales orders within SAP? So it depends. I mean, it again, one has to look at the total scenario and take a decision on it. So what I would recommend there is where are we doing the further subsequent document processing? Like what about the deliveries in case you have the scenario where deliveries are involved, or if you are just doing the billing, is SAP your billing system, or are you also billing out of the non-SAP system? So depending on that, your answers might change. You might want to create an order in SAP, or you might not. The advantage when you just create an order in SAP, I see is that the change processes. If you have complex change processes, like once an order gets created and you have multiple changes happening on that, then it makes sense to create that operational document also within SAP so that the change process are handled seamlessly. But if you are like creating an order and then forgetting it, it just goes through the subsequent processing steps and you don't have a lot of changes. In that case, it makes probably sense to just create the order RISE and be done with it. And then the subsequent document, if it's a billing document, you can always create a billing document without reference in SAP, which creates your follow-on document. You will have to do customization a little bit again to build the dependencies between the order RISE and the invoice RISE. But overall, the decision making is one has to consider these aspects, like should I consider them as external sender components at that point to create the order RISE, or should I just use the interface to create the order? Because all the information you need is already being sent over from the non-SAP system, right, to create the RISE. Now at this point, you have to take the call whether you need to create an order and let the order create the RISE, or you directly create the RISE. And also, one has to focus on the database growth size. I mean, if you are creating RISE, especially in a high volume scenario, if you are just creating RISE, your database may not grow as big so fast. But if you are creating the operational documents, we know, right? If you are creating a provider contract or a sales order, we know how many tables the data gets updated. So your database size grows pretty fast compared to just creating a RISE. So there are multiple aspects. I mean, we cannot say one is better over the other, but one has to look at so many of these aspects, and also include the archiving. Like if you are going to archive your operational documents much faster, if you have that flexibility, then you could as well, even the high data volume growth will not deter you from going to this decision of creating the operational document within SAP. I mean, you are trying to avoid lot of Z development. So this is one good way of doing it, because subsequent processes are all standard SAP. So you are reducing your point of failures because you are relying on SAP processes rather than Z processes.
Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind, I guess, is connecting the dots, right? In the case of many of these customers, in complex orders where it's a service, a product, maybe access to content, upgrades, physical goods, a whole bunch, it's entirely possible you could be getting information from 5 different systems.
Exactly.
How you tie those together is crucial.
Yeah, so in our case, we do have like about close to 15 million orders every, I mean, 15 million orders being created every month. So it's just not a RAI creation for us. We have decided to go with an order creation, which creates the RAI for us, because all the subsequent change processes are handled easily, like subscription extensions, subscription terminations. So all of those are handled seamlessly.
Okay. All right. We probably have time for one or two more questions. You know, we talked about this. Let's talk about the inbound processing and the integration layer rules engines. How does BRF plus, Sunil, play into this?
Yeah, so this is, of course, I mean, a lot of customers already are using BRF plus, and now one has to understand, again, in a high volume environment, especially, we don't want to complicate BRF plus. We want to simplify our BRF plus rules, because imagine a situation where you have a complex BRF plus setup. I mean, you can do whatever you want in BRF plus. Everyone knows that. You can have as many rows as you want. But when you are increasing the number of rows, which system has to determine, for example, a POB type. Let's take something as simple as a POB type. You want to go fancy and create different kinds of POB types just because you want to get some sort of a reporting. I will create different types of POB types, and then system has to run through multiple rows to get to a POB type determined during the processing. That is putting unnecessary strain on the system. And imagine if you have to process, if it's a low volume environment, you have 2,000 orders created in a day, let's say, and it has to go through those many lines in your BRF plus, it's pretty fine. But if you are talking about a high volume where instead of 2,000 orders, you are creating 200,000 orders a day, right? In that case, you don't want a lot of time to be spent, the system resources to be spent trying to determine a POB type. So don't go fancy there. Try to keep your BRF plus simple, and make sure that you are able to process it much faster. Again, going back to one of the points I mentioned earlier, it's all like how you test, right? You have to test with your true data volume, then only you will identify these kind of problems. When you're testing with 5 orders or 10 orders or 10 contracts, you will not know these problems. And of course, with external sender components, now you want to get something like a fulfillment information coming over from an external sender component. How you map that into the BRF plus rules engine? How you maintain your account determinations in the rules engine? So all of that, there is a lot of flexibility. At the same time, I caution that we should not be complicating things here, especially in high volume. Again, try to keep it simple and use that BRF plus more efficiently. It's a powerful tool. Again, if you don't use it the way it is designed for, and then you will get into these kind of problems.
Got it. Shashank, one of the things that we look at in terms of rules and rules engines is, you know, we talked about the receiving end rules in BRF plus, but on the front end, whether it's through project systems or through SOM or others, you want to be mindful of creating rules, you know, opportunity to create the rules up front as well, correct?
Yeah, that's true. So when we use things like project systems and other cost object related POC based scenarios, so we have to define the BRF plus rules in the decision tables accordingly to pull over the the percentage of completion from the cost objects that we calculate the results analysis yet.
Great. All right. We have time probably for one more question. So I think you made a very interesting point, Sunil, in the beginning, and I'll start actually with Shashank and give you a rest, but start with Shashank. Disclosures and analytics, you know, it's infinite possibilities. And of course, everybody wants to add as many fields and as many different permutations as possible. What should be, you know, at the end of the day, revenue accounting in part is about the ability to disclose the appropriate information per ASC 606, IFRS 15, and all of the other regulations. But by having all of those, it can become a data nightmare. What is your advice? What have you seen companies doing? And of course, we have some analytics and tools that you can use as jump starts, and we'll do another Ask the Experts on that. But what's your advice to people, Shashank and then Sunil, on as they think about disclosures and analytics?
So basically, the standard SAP reporting system contains some sort of disclosure reports, like they call as disaggregation of revenue reports by different dimensions, by customer, POB, and several other things. So that basically gives you, kind of status of what is your recognized revenue and what is unscheduled revenue, how much is posted, how much is deferred, and what is the remaining revenue and total timeline, all those things. But it's, to some extent, most of these reports doesn't exactly match with the statutory requirements of the street. So for that purpose, as you mentioned, we developed some subset of reports called Bramasol disclosure reports, where we created several reports like impairment loss report, revenue disclosure report, and waterfall report, short-term and long-term reports. So basically, yeah, the standardized reports will be helping you to see the high-level information. But if you're particular about meeting your statutory requirements, so it is something we have to enhance our own custom reports. So that's what my 2 cents on this disclosure report from my experience.
Okay, Sunil,
John, I would add that again, going back to the high volume scenario, some of your reports, please don't try to develop in ABAP. One should look at BW because with high volumes, it makes sense to go to BW. And of course, Bramasol also has these disclosure reports using BW tools. So leverage there, because BW will give you much faster output, especially in a high volume scenario compared to what you can get out of ABAP.
Yeah, and when we say BW, let's BW SAP Analytics Cloud.
SAC, exactly, SAC, yeah, SAC reporting, yep.
There is a question online somebody just asked, so I'm going to try and get to that question. Give me an example. Give me a second to look at that real quick, everybody. Let's see if I can get this to pop out. So Uday asks, what kinds of large volumes can we do without truly impacting performance? Any thoughts on that? And then there's something about POB number range. I'm not sure I understand. Uday asked that question. Can you clarify that last question while we answer the first one, Uday?
So what kind of a volume?
I guess my thought would be, maybe you can share some of the volumes that you guys are involved with to give the audience a sense of, you can have large volumes. For example, early on, when we had a webinar yesterday, there's a company out there that's doing billions of records. Every month they do almost 1 billion records. They process them. It takes about 11 hours. They do it offline. But are there system performance issues? Can you process millions of records? Do you have a sense of what that size is before it becomes negatively impacting?
I don't see that as, again, you have to look at your hardware resources, right? For somebody who is having not good hardware resources, definitely processing even a smaller set of data will be a problem. And when I say smaller set, I'm talking about millions of writes. So is 10 million doable? Is 20 million doable? Definitely they are. Again, you'll have to look at that. But there are certain things which would drastically hit your performance. Like if I have RA contracts, do I have 100 POBs in my contract, or do I have 5,000 POBs in my contract? And that is one area where one should focus on. Now, you should try to reduce the number of POBs in a contract. Even with a, let's say you are using SD as center component, how many line items do I have in an order? Do I have 1,000 line items with one order, or do I have 10 orders with 100 line items each, something like that. As long as you are reducing the lines in an operational document or in an RA contract, reduce the number of POBs. Those are the other things which one has to focus on. But in general, can SAP handle a large volume? Yeah, there's no limitation there. I mean, I will not say that there's no limitation, but in a general sense that no matter what the volume is, you could easily process them provided you have enough hardware resources.
Sure, that's a
And
great
I would
comment.
like to,
Yeah, Shashank, I'm going to ask you to answer that, but also maybe you can frame it, Shashank, because Sunil brought something up, the volume, velocity, complexity, and density, right? I think that has a big play. So go ahead, Shashank.
yeah, I would like to just add one more point. By using this optimized version of RAR, so these volumes are most of the time made real time. That means like earlier, you have to create the sales order items, fulfillment items, invoice items, and it used to be piled up, and unless you schedule a background job, it never used to be processed to RAR. But with this optimized version of RAR, the moment you create the RAI, does some activities on the sales order side, so system will automatically get it processed to RAR unless there is some error. So that makes life easy to not pile up those high volume of records, and also it will not log the records each other. Like it would not be logged, and there will not be any issue in the posting side as well.
Great, thank you. All right, well, we are out of time. I thank you guys. I know you took away time from the big projects you're working on. Next time, we're going to focus a little bit more. We'll raise some issues and talk about posting the AR versus FICA, and I think that'll be a good topic. Niraj, who's on here and helps me run all of these and coordinate everything. I guess I'm going to call you the producer, Niraj, right? So,
Thank you, Jim.
we'll focus in on this topic in the next one. I want to thank everybody again. I want to thank Sunil and Shashank for taking time out of their day to answer these questions. For the questions from the folks online, were fantastic. Remember that Bramasol, we're here because we are experts. We've done over 100 RAR projects. We've done several dozen projects in which we've integrated SAP BRIM, so the BRIM portfolio, but also, as you heard, many different other systems, whether it's Salesforce, Oracle, JD Edwards, many, many different systems into SAP RAR and into BRIM. So we're here to help you with our deep expertise. We believe that the world is moving towards this solutions economy, and we're here to help you. So with that, I want to thank everybody. I hope everybody has, for those of you listening live, make it a great weekend. Enjoy your weekend. For those of you who are listening to the recorded version, thank you for downloading and listening to us. And we look forward to speaking with you in the future. Again, thank you very much from Bramasol, from our entire team, and we look forward to working with all of you in the future. Bye-bye.